Okay, so I'll start off. Today is Tuesday, October 12th, 2021. My name is Kelsey Sham, and I am interviewing Mr. Oscar Wong on behalf of the Houston Asian American Archive. Mr. Wong, thank you so much for joining me today. We'll start off at the beginning of your life. Where were you born, and what was your childhood like? What memories do you have of your hometown?
Oh, I was born in Kingston, Jamaica, in the West Indies in 1940, prior to the onset of World War II. My family had a grocery store, a small 10 by 20 square foot about, and raised 5 children. I'm the second of 5, and we initially slept upstairs, one big bedroom, all of us, until we bought the house next door on one side and then the house next door on the other side over time. And so we kept growing and went through high school from, I see, grade school around the corner, and then another grade school, high school, before I went off to college. So I had a idyllic childhood, you might say.
Great, great. How did your family end up in Jamaica when you have Chinese ancestry? And do you know where or which province in China that your family is from?
Yes, both are from China in the southern part near Guangdong. They're not Cantonese, they're Hakka. Have you heard of the term?
I have, yes.
Okay, well, I'm Hakka. And I guess starting in the 1850s, the emigration began, and those Chinese went through Hong Kong, which is British. So the Hakka eventually ended up in 5 distinct locations, and those were Singapore, Uganda, West Indies, Vancouver, and England. And my branch started, I don't know when really, but by that time, some people, cousins, so forth, were in Jamaica, and that's where we ended up. So I was born and grew up there, but they both came from China.
I see. Very cool. Awesome. Are you and your family in contact with other Hakka people from your hometown still?
Very, very few. There are, I've come across one who was a classmate in college, in high school. We reconnected on a surprise connection in Scotland on one of our trips. He and another friend were there, and I was from here. So it turns out they came from a similar village. I think it's called Tonglaki. But there were no other real connections. Frankly, my both grandmothers were brought over while I was in high school. And while I was in college, in junior year, my family moved from Jamaica and went to London because of the political situation in Jamaica that we actually they were concerned, and so was the rest of the middle class, black, white, Asian, all left.
Can you talk a little bit more about that political situation and how it maybe has affected you or your family during that time?
It was at the time British, and they were becoming independent in 1962. That independence caused some concern because the government at the time were getting very comfortable and friendly with Castro. And the local middle class felt they were not comfortable with a socialist type of business. Could you hold off on that, Annie?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Well, my wife is doing some folding, and it's getting into my, just quit all that.
That's totally fine. Don't worry.
but I need to be here when I'm myself talking. So
Sure.
he's very organized,
Yes,
organizing me all the time.
I love that. So going on, is there a Hakka community in Asheville or a Chinese community in Asheville that you have found community with?
No, as a matter of fact, I arrived here in 1959 in the US, and I would think that I have come across possibly, 12 to 15 Hakka people. Each time it's been a huge surprise and all that, but I have not come across many Hakka. And I've been here since 1959. That's 60 plus years. So there's no community there are a lot of Asians I've come across, but normally they speak Cantonese or Mandarin and they're just different. So we're I don't know, we're dispersed and very few.
Yeah, I see. How does Hakka culture differ from Jamaican and American culture? Did you attend any Hakka events or have a Hakka community as you grew up? Maybe not now, but during your childhood?
Absolutely. In the grade school and high school days, we had a very active group, and they're all Hakka, of course, because of the fact that they're there in Jamaica. We had there was a building society which grub staked my father. There was a group that had a beach, Zhongshan, which was just for Chinese. We invited guests, but it's effectively a private club. It wasn't fancy by any stretch. It's just a little fenced-in swimming area. We had festivals, garden parties, and stuff, and they're all Hakka related. And I had it was a kind of an idyllic childhood, really. There were weddings would run 2-3 days. We said, when are we going back there? I said, well, the wedding's continuing. I said, oh my gosh, okay. But as kids, you just run around and enjoy it anyway. So as far as the specific, it was just who was there. We didn't think of us. We knew we were called Hakka, or also Kurja, which means guest people, because we came from the north. I understand we were the civil servants class and a separate nation. And when the Genghis Khan and his grandsons came through, we were decimated, and the balance ended up in South China. And we were accepted, but not assimilated.
I see. Very cool. Yeah, that's such an interesting part of history. So for growing up as a Hakka person in Jamaica, did you experience any, did you feel like you had to choose between Hakka culture and Jamaican culture?
It was somewhat of a blend. The Asian group, the Hakka group, was heavily Catholic. And within the Catholic Church, there was Black, Jamaican, white Jamaican, all mixed in. And I think it was rather, what should I say? We were somewhat segregated to a degree socially, but I would say not a lot. There's a lot of commingling in high school parties. There was a lot of mixture there, more among my generation as opposed to my parents' generation. They were a little bit more isolated because they didn't speak a lot of English. That was part of the problem. Whereas my generation, we born and raised there, we spoke English. As far as the culture is concerned, there was always a harking back to the Chinese culture. And in fact, my father planned to send us back to China. But when the communists took over, he thought, okay, that's that idea, and shifted his focus to the Western world. And his dream was to have us go to college, which two of us did, and the rest went over to England because they were younger. So,
I see. I see. How important is it for Hakka Chinese to stay united, like in communities and across the globe? And in what ways have they been able to help out each other throughout the years? Do you have any experience with that?
I think in Jamaica, it was very well shown by the fact that succeeding generations who would immigrate over to Jamaica would get grub staked to start a business. That's just what they did, because they wouldn't qualify for a standard bank loan. So the Hakka community would actually welcome and get them started. And it was very successful, because my guess is that with 0.7% of the population of Jamaica, I would guess that we probably controlled a good quarter of the economy.
Wow.
Through there, a lot of it was due to foodstuffs, wholesale, retail, dry cleaning services, manufacturing, and in fact, the extending the food services. I remember one of the guys came back from coming to the U.S. and brought sliced bread. I mean, we didn't have sliced bread before he showed up, and he was Chinese, and it became the rage all over down there. So.
Yeah. So you already spoke a little bit to this and about the commingling, especially like in the Catholic Church. But as a Chinese person growing up in Jamaica, how did you feel you were generally perceived by the public? Did you feel like an outsider at all? Did you feel like there was any racial tension towards Asians?
There were some occasionally, mostly from the less educated. Would be more, maybe it's a matter of jealousy, because one of the hallmarks, I believe, and it's being shown in the US right now, is a willingness to work and study. We have a amazing capacity to work and to be patient. And sometimes it's kind of backfired, because take California, which is horrendous. There are too many Asians in college, and they're trying to shift it. And I think rather than push that way, it should be put up as an example of, you can do it if you apply yourself. We're not, I don't believe that we're, what should I say, genetically smarter. I just don't believe that at all. We just have a culture of hard work and patience and determination, just sticking with it. When I consider my parents raising 5 kids in a 10 by 20 retail grocery store, it's unbelievable work. It's 6 in the morning to 10 at night, 6.5 days. They eventually, my mother taught my dad and said, or maybe it was my dad, he said, let's cut that son in, Jonka, because people are just going to take advantage of it. He said, they just got to know that we're shut down. So 6 days a week, 6 to 10. I remember when we would allow a few hours Sunday morning, and my dad put a stop to that. So, but that's pretty rough.
Yeah. Did you have to work in the grocery store frequently, or were you given more like administrative duties, or did you focus on school?
Well, I have to give my dad a lot of credit for allowing me to actually help out. Now, I actually helped out and was expected to help out, especially on Saturdays when I'm not in school. The school had precedence, but on Saturdays I would work in the shop all day because it was needed. sometimes on off days, I would get up in the morning and open the shop at 6 o'clock with my dad. Now that was not, what should I say? That was something that was, I'm a morning person. And then after my sisters got old enough to help out in the shop, I got to run around on Saturdays and come back and close the shop at night. And I got all the credit for that. And my sister to this day fuss about the fact that you're the hero and we did all the damn work all day.
Yeah. No, I actually, my grandfather and his siblings also owned grocery stores in Houston. And my dad always worked as well. School, of course, was the most important thing, but that's so interesting to see these connections between Houston and Kingston. What kind of goods did your grocery store sell?
It's all food related. There was a little bit of cosmetics, cough syrups and stuff, kind of a mini drug, Band-Aids, but that was a small part. It's all food related. Canned food, salted codfish, salted mackerel, cooking oils, all food related.
I see. So skipping forward a bit, in 1959, I see you moved to South Bend, Indiana. Why South Bend? And was there a big cultural difference there than there was in Jamaica?
It was a huge change. I was fortunate that my roommate, also from Jamaica, Richard Chin, we came up together and we ended up in South Bend because of Notre Dame. That's where we attended. However, his sister lived in Grand Rapids, Michigan, a few hours drive north of South Bend. She welcomed us and suggested we come in a couple weeks early. And she and her husband, who was, as I use the term, pale face, she's like my wife is, to acclimate. And that was very useful, actually. But I would say once I got to Notre Dame, it was like normal, and they were very accepting. And I have to admit that I got a lot of, what should I say, welcoming at all levels, by families, by the students, and I just felt like one of the students. And we're all male, by the way, that and no women.
I see. So you didn't feel like there was much racial tension then in South Bend at Notre Dame?
Well, no, I think one of the observations I've had is that if there are only a few outsiders or different, it's not a problem. I remember going to South Dakota, and I was a little concerned going with my roommate from South Dakota, and I saw these Indians being thrown out of bars, and I turned to my buddy Mike and said, "Mike, gee, I look a lot like these guys. Am I in trouble?" He said, No. You're different. They know you're from Notre Dame. You're visiting, and you're fine." And there were a couple of Black families there, and they were totally accepted. But there were a fair amount of Indians, and so that was a problem. It's interesting that if you have just a few of outsiders, it's okay. People accept you. Maybe you're different, but there's no discrimination. Discrimination happens when there's a little bit of pressure because now you're 5, 10, 15% of the group, and you're expected to be, it becomes a kind of a threat in a way.
Yeah. When you say Indians, do you mean Asian Indians or like Native American?
No. Indigenous Indians.
Okay.
To American Indians.
American. Interesting. Okay. So I see you started your first career in engineering, right? Was that a career that you were sure that you wanted? Was that something you were passionate about? Or did you have any other interests that you were maybe interested in pursuing?
I think at that time, I just thought of myself as an engineer. I think it started way back in almost grade school. I had an ease with math and so forth, and I was always geared toward doing some technical work. So engineering was part of what I thought I really wanted to do, and I found it fascinating, rewarding, exciting, all the rest of it. And I guess as you grow older, you find that there are other things that can work. And I think when I started my own business is, and I became, well, before that I became a supervisor and manager and then some of my own business. And the clarity of doing just straight technical work, I understood was, I was never, there's so many people smarter. I said, wait a minute, I can't compete straight up. And I found that I was better off at coordinating, collaborating with people, and leading by example, or without going to details, I could actually understand enough that I could motivate them to do work. So pretty early on, I found I have a master's in engineering, and I had PhDs reporting to me, and I could see where, yes, absolutely, they're smarter than me, but you know what? They don't see the bigger picture. And I think I was fortunate to pick that up.
Yeah. Was it difficult to start your own business at all? Do you feel like there were any hurdles you had to overcome?
Not really. I think I had been in the nuclear field for much of my professional life in engineering. And the time came that I had enough of a relationship with the clients that I reported to for the company I worked for. And I thought, you know what? I think I can do it my way and feel more comfortable in directing it. And there was never any sense of prejudice or issues of that sort. A lot of times it's because of where I was. Now, I will say that the potential for problems or the potential for prejudice and issues would hide most possible. And I didn't really sense it, but in San Francisco, where there's so many Chinese, everywhere else I've been, there have been hardly any.
Yeah. On the topic of nuclear waste, in your opinion, what can individuals do? What can the world do to slow down climate change or save the environment? I know that's a loaded question.
Well, I firmly believe that nuclear waste, the problem was in the nuclear industry and then modified and moved over to the waste end of it, because my specialty was working with new plants. But I believe nuclear has a big role to play in backing off on climate change, without a doubt, because actually we all live in a radioactive world. We're being bombarded as we speak. And this earth is habitable because there's a magma with low-grade fission going on, and it's molten and it's hot, and the heat from the sun. So between the two, this world is habitable. And I think spewing out, well, all of the issues, all of the themes can be applied, whether it's wind, solar, nuclear, fossil. You shouldn't take anything off the plate. There should be balance and then shifted and modified, and maybe push in one direction a little bit from time to time to adjust. But to go wholesale and cut one or the other out makes no sense to me.
Yeah, thank you so much for your insight. So now we'll move on into the present. How does your current life in North Carolina compare to your childhood in Jamaica, culturally and socially?
Well, in Jamaica, we were relatively poor. I mean, we're not, I would say poor, but we considered somewhat lower middle class relatively. But in terms of um, physical well-being, I mean, we didn't have hot running water. It was cold showers and so forth. So I would say my life there and here are light years different in personal comfort. And as far as culturally, um, I have I have actually found less of a cultural bias in the U.S. than I did in Jamaica. I remember in several occasions I would go with some friends and try to go into certain places, and I looked around and I'm the only Asian in there, and are you a member? And it's obvious I wasn't a member, and so I thought, okay, that happened down there, but I have not run into that in the U.S. The closest I came was in Chicago in my freshman year to find a job. I mean, to find a place to live, and I walked into a couple of places where they had a room to rent, and as soon as I walked, I said, no, we don't have a room. And it was clear that they weren't comfortable, and that's fine. But that only happened in one or two places. And then after that, other than that, I've been here since 59, 60 some years. Hardly any.
Yeah, that's great. So comparisons between your family then and your family now. Were you close with your family back then, your siblings, your parents? And what are your relationships like with your family right now in the present?
Okay, I have a sister in Connecticut, and we're in touch maybe a couple times a year. We don't we're not and we might, and they visit once in a while. We might visit them, but it's not a regular close. My youngest sister is in London, and she has three kids who have been. One of them, the middle one daughter, is in Washington State, and two boys are back in England after making tours around, working in Hong Kong, whatever. We celebrated my youngest sister's birthday 2 years ago on a cruise, which we've never done, and we won't be doing another one. It's okay. Our family, we don't communicate like every month or like a couple times a year. It's just, but I feel we're close in the sense that we're a tight-knit family. If anything were to come up, we would definitely be there.
Yeah. Were you close with your parents?
I think so. I know my dad was quite proud of me because among the extended family, I was the first and not the oldest, because many were older, to go off to college. He felt like his cousins were rather much more well off. They had wholesale and bigger businesses, and he was at a grocery store who got helped. I would say I don't know. It's hard to say how much we're. I was close to my dad and my mother. The last few years of her life lived a couple of miles from us. We brought her back from. Well, my father passed away, and then she went to Amsterdam, remarried, and then eventually, and he passed away. So we brought her over here, and my wife could see that she would be much happier, even though she had a daughter in England with kids. She'd be much happier here, and she was. She and I think I spent the last year or so. She had pancreatic cancer, so she knew, and we talked, and got a lot of input about family life.
That's so nice that you were able to have that time with her. So you mentioned that you had cousins, right, and aunts and uncles that also were in the grocery store business. Were they also in Kingston?
Yes, and well, they were not in the grocery store, but they were in a wholesale business. They were bigger and much more well off. They had cars and they had big homes, and we didn't. But they had preceded my father by quite a bit. And yeah, we were clearly related. Sometimes many steps removed, sometimes actual first cousins. But our family kind of started the trajectory away from toward college as opposed to business.
Mhm. Were you close with your cousins at all, or your aunts and uncles?
We saw them a fair amount when I was younger. And we tended to drift apart as soon as we got into high school because I think they started to lag behind a little bit scholastically, and and I kind of ended up with another separate group. You know how people kind of find their own level.
Yeah, I get that. So moving on into the present, then, what is your family like today? Are you guys close? Do you guys go on trips together? I know your wife is with you right now, so.
Oh, we do. As a matter of fact, we're here in this location for 2 weeks. We come down to this area with the last many times now. We'll spend about a couple weeks. Sometimes we go north up to Maine in the summertime. So, in fact, our elder daughter, we have two daughters. One's running the company. She's the Highland Brewing. And the younger one, a year and a half younger, is developmentally disabled. And she lives with a couple across from the brewery, it turns out. So it's very close and very convenient. Our daughter is coming in. Her husband is not able to come because he's too busy. He worked in the company too, and he just can't break away. But she's coming on Wednesday, and she's leaving on Sunday. And the caregivers wanted to make sure that both the two sisters could overlap, so they're coming on Friday, and they'll stay with us all the way through the following Saturday when we leave. So, and I see my elder daughter every day, almost, when she's around, and the younger one we see every week at least. So we're close, and we're fortunate because we happen to have a business that I was able to talk our daughter into joining, and then now she's running it.
Yeah. Congrats on that. So, in your opinion, I know this is a big question and you can take a little time to think about it if you would like, but what keeps the family together and what keeps you guys running when things get hard?
Let's see. I believe my wife has been always very insightful when it comes to people, and a caring person, and kind of relatively strict. I mean, I remember she was a disciplinarian when the girls were growing up. I was the patsy, if they could sneak it by me, they come check with dad, and oh yeah, sure. But she'd be a little more disciplined, and I think between the two of us, it kind of worked out as a good balance. And our elder daughter has lunch with my wife every week. No matter how busy she gets, she kind of look to her. So it's the two girls. They just get together and too late and catch up with stuff. And sometimes I'm included. Sometimes, well, no, rarely included for those things. But we do socialize regularly, and I think it's we're close and tight because I think we're respectful of each other. I'll give you an example. Just a couple of days ago, we were down here on vacation, and get a call and I missed the call and I called back and my wife could see that our daughter is reluctant to bother me, so-called. I said, so I had to write back to her, and I'm reluctant to bother her unless we need to. But I wrote back and I said, I want to make it very clear. I said, I'm on vacation, but you're making some life level decisions related to yourself and the company. And I'm always available to talk. Don't be reluctant. So, I just had to state it black and white. And I think my wife is also very concerned and considerate about what my requirements are, and in turn myself. I like I said this morning, my biggest concern today now is where and what are we going to have for dinner, and what kind of great cocktail can I come up with. So, and she's been very considerate of all of us, and I think that's the glue. I think, and we respect each other's boundaries because we're all fairly different. I'm all ready for a party at the drop of a hat. And my wife's more introverted, and she reflects on things a lot. And every time I write something that I need to go give a talk, and I said, I'd like to run it by her and just take a quick look. And half the time, you'll come back to, you can't say this. Well, why not? So I think that sums up how, as far as your question about how we're tight. Another little quick anecdote. Our elder daughter wanted to join the company when I started after a couple of years. She said, "Oh, Dad makes beer. I'm out of college a few years, and I can sell beer." So, I said, no. That's I think you better do something different. And then she said, "Well, okay." And she was very gracious about it. She gets into the high school yearbook business and has done phenomenally well. How well? Let me just tell you. She's been with the company 10 years. She's now the CEO. She's making half of what she was making 10 years ago. Okay.
Wow. Congrats to her. That's amazing.
So, and I give her husband a lot of credit for saying to her, so you're not interested in taking over the family business? Are you crazy? I said that to her one day and she just laughed. She said, I can't believe it. That's what my husband is saying. But so it's more of a, what should I say? It's a lifestyle change. She did turn me down for quite a while before she accepted, and her husband talked her into it. So, and now she's doing great. I mean, we consult constantly. I go in every day, but I'm not in the line of activity. I check on the economic and regulatory side of business, and just in the background. But she's in charge, and checked in with me, and just to get my thoughts on things. But she's definitely in charge, and we're rather proud of that.
Yeah, I bet. That's so great. So going into the world of beer, why did you shift careers into the world of beer, and what was interesting about it to you?
Well, I've always enjoyed beer, all the way from, I'd say, actually from the old Chinese. My first beer I got at 11 years old. My dad gave us a couple ounces because he would cook on Sundays, and there would be, fried prawns, roast duck, and roast pork, and all those things are considered hot. And you need to cool it off with rice, soups, vegetables, and maybe a couple ounces of hard cider or beer. And I had a taste for it even then. And I'm the only one in the whole family that drinks alcohol. even my extended family, and my youngest sister's youngest boy is the only other person in the whole extended family that also tolerates and enjoys beer and alcohol. By the way, he happens to be the same birthday as mine, October
Cool.
21st.
Cool. Happy
Let
early
me think.
birthday.
Something like, and we're both sign of the dragon, 48 years difference.
Wow. Wow. It was meant to be, I think.
Yeah. Wait a minute. I may be wrong on that. Maybe it's 36. I don't know, whatever. It's probably it. So, so I've always enjoyed beer, and my engineering business in nuclear waste was sold, and in '87 and in 1990, they moved the operation from Charlotte, where we lived, over to California, and didn't have any room for a 50-year-old washed-up engineer. So I came home, and my wife said, you don't have to work for quite a while. Why don't you take a break and enjoy it? Because at 50 years old, you're healthy, your energy and so forth, and just take some time off. So it was so 2 years into it, I was called to do some consulting in my specialty, nuclear waste, in Washington, D.C., which I did on a part-time basis. And then in the fourth year, I was introduced to an award-winning brewer who wanted to start a brewery. And the mutual friend realized that this guy got an award, but he really couldn't afford to start it. He didn't have the money, he didn't have the business experience, nor the marketing understanding. So I got roped into it, and actually my wife was not unhappy to see that happen. So that's how it got started. And I had no idea that it would be something I would do this 27 years later. But I really don't do that much.
Yeah. So how did your friends and family react when you decided to open Highland Breweries and step away from engineering?
It was, well, I had quit engineering effectively for 4 years. So I think they didn't really expect that I would go back into engineering proper. So it wasn't a big change. My extended family seemed to be pleased about it. I know my wife thought it was a good idea to just try something new.
Yeah.
So here we are.
Yeah, here we are. Was there any discrimination as a Chinese brewery owner?
Actually, I think it went the other way. In Asheville, they're just a handful of Asians, and they all have restaurants, whether they be Thai, Chinese, Vietnamese, Japanese. It's all food related, and this is a little different. I have not run into any kind of prejudice that I'm aware of. Maybe I'm blind to it, but I don't think so.
That's great. So I see Highland was the first legal brewery in Asheville, North Carolina since Prohibition. What was the process like to achieve that status? How did that happen?
Well, when we started, it was difficult because nobody in the area had ever done this before, and all the regulatory folks had no idea about. They'd ask questions like, "You mean you're going to actually boil things and have a big gas fire thing? It could blow the place up, or you're going to make steam and it's going to stink up the place." It's just all kinds of things that they had no idea what it was like. So we had to go through those hoops. We got the federal license, then we got the state license, then we got the local city license, and It was being the pioneer. It was tough, and we stuck with it, got it going, and we're still, as my daughter says over and over, said, you know, you just cannot take it away from us. We're number one.
Yes, you are. So I also see that Highland has grown into the largest North Carolina-based brewery. Congrats. What was the journey like getting to this point? What makes Highland truly special to you?
That's not what we set out to do. I thought we'd had 2 or 3 breweries in Asheville eventually, and now there's close to 40 brewing operation in a town of under 90,000 people. That's amazing. So I think we were very careful about quality and consistency. We dumped thousands of gallons of beer in the beginning, and every now and then we will dump if it does something goes awry and we're not totally happy with it. It goes on tube. So we find that that's helped us a lot to have a reputation for consistency and quality. And over time, that reputation's stood us in good stead. And we also take very good care of our staff.
Yeah. What, in your opinion, makes a really good beer?
I believe that, like anything else that you ingest, it shouldn't have a one aspect that stands out and knocks you between the eyes. In other words, let's say you want to make something that has some bitterness. The bitterness should not be to such a degree that nothing else comes out. Let's say you want to make it malty. It can't be so sweet that all you pick up is sweetness. The idea of an excellent beer, as with anything else that you eat, it should have balance. If you're going to make it much hoppier, you should balance it with a little bit more malt, and just maybe it just the things need to work together. Otherwise, it becomes unidimensional, and people don't. Sometimes, you know, the macho guys, you know, they like to hit something that everybody else will just be, you know, taken aback because it's just so powerful, and they're showing off, you know. But I mean, that's just doesn't work in the long run. So that's what I think makes for great beer or great food, great anything, is the idea of there should be complexity, balance, drinkability, flavor, aroma. It just things that work together.
Yeah, I completely agree. So as a beer aficionado, obviously, with a really refined palate, do you also cook a lot? And do you enjoy cooking? Did your family, you know, you mentioned your dad cooked on Sundays, especially growing up. What kind of food did you eat back then? And if you cook now, what kind of food do you enjoy cooking?
Okay, my dad used to cook a variety of things that would go from stuffed oysters, fried prawns, roast duck. Roast duck was kind of my childhood favorite. We'd raise them and he would roast them, and roast pork, stuffed vegetables, and just a myriad of foods, all Chinese. And he loved to cook. He enjoyed it, and I've carried on the tradition. And I cook brunch on Sundays. And you know, our kids will show up, or even we have friends sometimes. That's what we enjoy. Now, today, we, you know, my wife's over the years has gotten really good at, and for some time would cook. I didn't know what I'd end up with. I could come home at night from a long day at the office in New York, let's say, and when we lived up there, and it could be French, Chinese, Indian, Greek, Spanish. I didn't know what would she like cooking that day, and she had a touch. And to this day, I love to cook, and I still cook brunch. And on occasion, for instance, we're down on the coast, so we had some fish yesterday. Just lightly sautéed, fresh. It was, and I think that we actually had dinner when we showed up. We also had fish. We're gonna cook more of an eclectic American type. We don't. Occasionally, we'll have sautéed Chinese style cooking, and my wife does that well, and I enjoy cooking. Yes, I have to hasten to say that I can't claim that I have the finest palate in the world because it's jaded. I'll be 81 next week, so I think everything tastes great to me, and I don't want to be so good that when my friends and staff members, when we go somewhere, we sip a beer and ooh, did you pick up on whatever? No, tastes okay to me.
Yeah, I've been there for sure. So Highland is more than just a brewing company, right? You're quite involved in your community, often hosting events year round that I read about. Can you talk a little bit about those events and what you love the most about them?
From the very beginning, I've always felt very strongly about being a part of the community. And we were able to do more and more of that at this new location. So we have volleyball courts, we have disc golf, we have trails. This building of about 4 acres, 180 some thousand square feet, sits on 40 acres of land. And we were fortunate to be able to purchase in 2 pieces and have it all so we can treat it the way we want. Now, the community part is what came first, because before we were able to do any of that downtown, we helped nonprofits as much as we could. And when we didn't have the cash, we said, okay, we'll give you beer. And hopefully the beer will release the cash from your supporters. And that was the idea. And so it's very important to us to be a very strong member of the community. The community has been helpful to us over the years and helped us to grow to what we are. So that's, I don't know if I answered your question, but.
Yeah, that's a fantastic answer. That's great. I always love seeing businesses help out nonprofits and see the effects that they have on the community. And they really can rally people together around a cause. Having worked for a couple of nonprofits myself. So, all right. So last year you received the National Recognition Award by the Breweries Association. Congratulations. What advice would you give to young entrepreneurs who want to start their own company but are maybe afraid of negative feedback from their family or friends?
I think if you have a passion for something and you've done enough homework, you don't want to do too much homework, because if you study something too much, you won't do it. There are too many liabilities, okay? I think just despite what friends or family might say, if you feel strongly enough about something and you've done your homework, it's worth giving it a try, sure. And that one big aspect today, more than ever, is not just looking at the bottom line. If that's all you look at, you lose out on staff, vendors, customers, you name it. You cannot just focus on the bottom line. It has to be organic and tied in with everybody. Your family, your staff, your community, your customers, and make them and connect with them. Because there's an old saying, people don't buy from corporations, they buy from people. And the local push over the last decade has proved that people are starting to recognize that, wait a minute, yeah, I can get the stuff cheaper from so and so, but there's no service, there's no connectivity locally. And I would say definitely look about your local community and how your business fits in.
Yeah, it's so true. That connection is of paramount importance. I completely agree. What are your future plans for the business? I know you mentioned that one of your daughters is running the business right now, but are there any other changes in store?
It's really up to her. Let me just say that my ownership has been split between my daughter and my wife and me, so kind of equally, and so they could outvote me and send me down the road any day. But it's really her call, because it's easy for me to hang in there right now and be available as a old guru who's been there, done that. I don't want to interfere, and so my thinking is that I'm completely in accord with what her plans are, and I'll work with her to achieve those plans. If I see a direction that she's taking that I'm a little concerned about, we'll talk about that. I'll tell her why. But if we're personally comfortable, and that if we don't get anything out of the brewery, or we don't owe anything to the brewery, we're good. We're fine. We're in a retirement home at the moment already. So there's one thing that I wanted to tie back from Jamaica to the brewery, and that is, when we were growing up, if the Wongs were invited, it wasn't going to be mother and father. There's going to be the whole tribes coming, because there's no such thing as babysitters, right? So without babysitters, it was always a family move to whatever the event is. Right now at the brewery, we have a meadow. We also have a tap room where families love to come there, because mom, dad can come in, throw a blanket down there to sit at a picnic bench and have whatever, and the kids will run around. Sometimes on a Friday night, there'll be more kids than adults. And they're running around, having a good old time. They come back with food or drink and then go run around again. And they go home and they go to sleep. And the kids will opt to come here every time. And the parents love it. So it's kind of it's almost a throwback to my upbringing as to how families stay together in those situations. And I'm quite proud of that, actually, that aspect.
Yeah, it's like you've come full circle almost, and it kind of harkens back to the phrase that, like, it takes a village to raise a child, right? Like, your business is helping parents, raise their children, open up their children to having fun just in the park again, and in an open space. So that's wonderful. My last question for today is, what is your life motto, and what do you attribute your success and happiness to?
My life motto is, I think I have a sense of gratitude across the board from the time I was very young all the way through. There's so many folks that have been helpful and good to me, and my only way of showing my appreciation is to pay it forward and do the same. So that's my life motto, is a feeling of gratitude. I believe that's probably the same thing that's the underpinning of my sense of well-being, happiness, and Well, as far as success is concerned, a lot of that is straight up luck, you know. I've always, well, I remember I have to quote my mother on this, said, you know, when I was somewhere about, I don't know, early teens, I think, she said one day, son, you know, we speak in Chinese. She don't call me by my name when it's really portentous, you know. Son said, you're fairly bright. You're very lazy. But by God, you're lucky. And I've lived with that. Kelsey, that's been my motto all my life. I'm just,
Yeah.
so you can have everything coming your way and it just doesn't work. To no fault. You can work hard, you be smart, be everything. And if the timing is bad, it doesn't work. So I would say whatever success I've had, I think it's a big part of it is my respect for other people, my gratitude for people, and most importantly, plain dumb luck.
I love that. That's so honest, and I love that. Do you have any questions for me or anything that maybe I passed up that you would like to elaborate more on?
No, you've gone through quite a bit of my stuff, and it's fascinating that you all are doing this down at Rice University, and you all got started. It's interesting that some of the things I heard from when initially about how do I fit in and what kind of potential prejudices I might have run into, and maybe I'm blind, but you know, I don't know. I really haven't run into much of it at all.
Yeah, I'm glad for you. That's great. So, all right. Well, I think we're done, but I'm going to stop the recording now.
Okay.